Good afternoon, everyone, as well as that. Welcome back to the channel. And today we're talking about Hurricane Marco and Tropical Storm Laura discussion and update. Before I do get started with the video, I do ask that you do hit that red subscribe button down below and turn those notification bell icons to never miss one of my videos. And make sure to hit that like button. Let's see if we can get this video up to 5 likes and share with your family and friends. So here you can see on the map, you can see there's no waves coming off of Africa currently at the moment, but here is Hurricane Marco and Tropical Storm Laura, as Laura does make its way kind of south towards where Marco was, but looks like Hurricane Marco will be kind of going down towards New Orleans. So if you're in New Orleans, you need to start preparing now for possibly some hurricanes. So first, let's hop into Hurricane Marco. As you can see, we have hurricane warnings along the Louisiana coast, right here in hurricane watches and tropical storm watches, and looks like we have some tropical storm warnings right along the Mississippi coast. It is a hurricane already, but it is expected to be a tropical storm at landfall. We'll show you guys the wind speed probabilities. See a big chunk, a 90% chance right here, and also a very large amount of tropical storm force winds where you're going all the way into Texas. So if you're kind of on that Texas-Louisiana coast, you could be possibly receiving some very strong winds. So that is definitely not out of the picture, as well as some pretty intense, possibly some rain as well. So what are the arrival times of this tropical storm / hurricane? It'll be receiving these winds kind of on the Louisiana coast Monday at around 2 a.m., more inland Monday at around 8 a.m., and then it should kind of dissipate once it kind of reaches kind of up towards the northeastern part of Texas and the northwestern part of Louisiana. So let's get into these key messages for Tropical Storm Marco. This is from the 10 a.m. advisory number 13. Hurricane conditions and life-threatening storm surge and heavy rainfall are expected from Marco along portions of the Gulf Coast beginning on Monday, and hurricane and storm surge warnings have been issued. Interest in these areas should follow any advice given by local government officials. So we knew this from yesterday. We knew there was going to be some storm surge. So if you're kind of along that coast, you need to be thinking about possibly kind of evacuating more inland and possibly preparing for some possible damages as well. So if you're in this area, please listen to your higher authorities. And then Tropical Storm Laura could bring additional storm surge, rainfall, and wind impacts to portions of the United States Gulf Coast by the middle of next week. This could result in a prolonged period of hazardous weather for areas that may also be affected by Marco. Interest there should continue to monitor the progress of Marco and Laura and updates to the forecast during the next few days. So as we both know, this Hurricane Marco and Tropical Storm Laura are expected to kind of hit Louisiana back to back. So you're kind of in that double whammy if you're in New Orleans. So you need to start taking your precautions. So let's look at the total rainfall. You can see kind of along the Louisiana coast, New Orleans area, you could be receiving around 4 to 6 inches of rain in areas of around 6 to 10 kind of off the coast. So that could result in very intense flooding. So flooding is definitely not out of the issue. And then here is the flooding percentages. So you can see here 15% chance marginal for some flooding, and then kind of along the Miami coast, possible with Tropical Storm Laura. So how hard are these storm surges going to be? Well, they've been upgraded to 4 to 6 feet along Lake Bourne, and then 2 to 4 feet from Sabine Pass all the way down to Morgan City, and then 2 to 4 feet kind of by Ocean Springs, and then 1 to 3 feet by the Mississippi and Alabama border. You can see kind of by the lakes here, 2 to 4 inches is possible, so that could definitely cause some damage to the boats if you're down by the lake. So let's look at some model guidance here. Same thing, most of the models are very consistent with it hitting New Orleans. Now, some of the models do have it turning left, some models have it turning right, but most of the models are very consistent with it kind of going up through the coast and then kind of dissipating out into Texas and parts of Oklahoma. Here's the intensity guidance. This isn't going to be a very strong hurricane. A lot of the models do have reaching Category 1 status and then kind of falling apart in the next 12 to 36 hours. And I think that's a very strong possibility, but at least we're not going to be dealing with a very intense hurricane. And then here we're going to look at some convection or some satellite imagery. You can see a big chunk of convection really kind of starting to fire off there in the middle, which is down at around -80 on the cloud tops. So very intense thunderstorms there. And then this kind of area, we're going to just kind of start watching to see if anything kind of starts to form kind of on the eastern side. But you can see definitely some banding trying to form up to on the northern half of this storm. So let's look at the wide river. You can see it's very close to the shore. big chunk of water really kind of starting to fire off right there as we saw on the previous slide. But definitely some banding, definitely trying to form. So in Louisiana, you may be already experiencing some clouds with this storm, as it is expected to make landfall here in the next day or two. So what are the current stats for Hurricane Marco? Its current pressure is at 992 millibars. Remember, these winds need to be withheld for at least a minute, so its max sustained winds are at 65 knots or 75 miles per hour, so barely a Category 1 hurricane. Current location on the latitude and longitude scales at 25.3 north, 87.4 west, and its current movement, it is moving north-northwest at 12 knots or at 14 miles per hour. So let's look at my forecast. I have it becoming a Category 1 hurricane at landfall, as you can see up here on the northern half. And then once it does reach inland, I have it dropping down to a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. And you can see on the right here, you can see the wind speed required for it to become a hurricane or tropical storm. But as of right now, I have it at a 75-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane, then kind of intensifying, kind of staying at around that 77-mile-per-hour range, and then it falling apart once it does reach inland. And then here on my impact forecast, I do have hurricane conditions are possible for the coast of Louisiana, and then kind of around the Florida, Mississippi, Alabama border, and parts of Texas could be receiving tropical storm conditions just due to the winds, and then maybe parts of kind of in your Houston, San Antonio area, you could be receiving some tropical depression just from possibly some rain left over and maybe some high winds, but nothing really to be concerned about if you're kind of in the tropical depression areas right along here. Alright, let's hop into Tropical Storm Laura. As you can see, it is kind of sitting over the Dominican Republic area, so we do have tropical storm warnings are in effect for practically all of Cuba, and some tropical storm watches are definitely still in effect for parts of the Bahamas and the Keys, as well as it is expected to become a hurricane on Tuesday and then reach landfall on around Thursday in the morning. So here are the tropical storm probabilities. You can see a big chunk of really strong tropical storm force winds right here, and that is expected to kind of fall apart a little bit as it does kind of reach Cuba, as it does kind of go over that, and then it will intensify due to some extremely warm waters in the Gulf right now, with probables of 70 to 80% chance of tropical storm force winds right as it does kind of reach the coast of Louisiana and Texas. So when are the arrival times? Cuba, you'll be receiving these winds probably around tonight, around 8 p.m., and then it will leave Cuba right around Monday, around 8 p.m. with these winds, and then Louisiana will be expecting these winds Tuesday night, and then parts of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and maybe parts of Alabama on the coast could be receiving these winds Wednesday around 8 p.m. in the overnight hours. Let's get into these key messages. So tropical storm conditions are expected across portions of the Dominican Republic and Haiti and the Turks and the southeastern Bahamas and Cuba through Monday. Heavy rainfall is likely across these areas and could cause mudslides and life-threatening flash and urban flooding. So really nothing new with these tropical storms other than mudslides. Could be a real key factor if you're kind of on a slope. You definitely don't want that happening to your house, and then flooding, obviously, with rain, with these really intense storms, there's obviously going to be a big threat for flooding. Tropical storm conditions are possible over the central Bahamas and Andros Island tonight and Monday, and in the Florida Keys on Monday. So if you're in the Florida Keys, you may want to think about possibly getting ready for some tropical storms in your area, and also the Bahamas. And then the last one that they did release is, while the details of the long-range track and intensity forecast remain uncertain, Laura is forecasted to strengthen over the Gulf of Mexico, and there is an increased risk of storm surge, rainfall, and wind impacts along portions of the U.S. Gulf Coast by the middle of the week. This could result in a prolonged period of hazardous weather for areas that are likely to be affected by Marco earlier in the week. Interests along the Gulf Coast should monitor the progress of Laura and Marco and updates to the forecast during the next few days. So again, really nothing new here. If you're in this area, if you're in Louisiana and parts of Texas, you need to be monitoring this. Cuba and the Florida Keys, obviously, it's kind of right over you right now. Flooding is still very possible, again, as it did share earlier, possibly some storm surge. So that could also be a big factor of how this storm kind of plays out. Alright, so let's look at the rainfall totals here. You can see a big chunk of 6 to 10 inches of rain as it does reach inland of the coast. And then around New Orleans, we're seeing about 4 to 6 inches of rain, maybe 6 to 10 inches. So flooding is obviously going to be a very big key with this storm. And then here's a kind of closer view of where the tropical storm warnings and watches are. As you can see, here is where the wind field is right now. Cuba is probably receiving a little bit of this right now, but there's a kind of big, kind of closer view of this. And then obviously the southern Bahamas are in the tropical storm watches. Here's the model guidances. You can see very consistent models. This model has it turning right kind of into Florida. I don't think that's going to be happening at all. But most of the models are very, very consistent with it kind of going into the Texas, Louisiana area. Couple models with it kind of turning sooner, kind of along right here. I'll show you guys my forecast here in a minute. And here's the intensity guidance. So this has been very consistent. One model does have it becoming a Category 4. Most of the models have it very consistently at a Category 1, maybe a Category 2 hurricane. Which I think it could very well happen, but we'll just have to see how it reacts to those really warm waters in the Gulf and how much it intensifies. So let's look at some satellite imagery. You can see banding kind of starting to form up here and out towards here a little bit. Big area of convection right along here with around negative 75 all the way down to negative 80 on the cloud top. So very, very intense thunderstorms. You can see another area of convection maybe trying to form kind of back here a little bit. And then here on the water vapor, I don't know why it's like this. I got that from Tropical Tidbits. Big area of convection really kind of starting to fire off back here and possibly a little bit back here. So we'll have to be keeping our eyes kind of on this and have to be monitoring this very, very closely. Here's my forecast. I have it being a very weak Category 3 hurricane, and let me tell you why. There's not going to be much shear, not much dry air in the atmosphere, so I just think that this storm is going to intensify and use all that Gulf water to its advantage. I don't have it becoming a Category 1 hurricane until about 48 hours at around 74 to 77 mile per hour winds, and 60 hours 80 to 85 mile per hour winds, and then intensifying to a Category 2 hurricane with 96 to 105 mile per hour winds, kind of having it being a Category 2 right before landfall around 84 hours at 106, 110 miles per hour, and then around landfall maybe a little later with around a major hurricane in 96 hours with 111 to 115 mile per hour winds. Here's my intensity or my tropical storm conditions / hurricane conditions forecast. Cuba and Haiti are obviously under a big area of tropical storm conditions, as you will be getting hit with this. Maybe the Yucatan Peninsula could be receiving some tropical depression conditions with winds. Other than that, maybe the Florida coast as well with just maybe some little bit of rain and a little bit of winds. But other than that, Louisiana under another hurricane condition area, and then kind of to the right and to the left of Louisiana could be receiving some tropical storm conditions with winds, obviously, and rain. What are the current stats for Tropical Storm Laura? Its current pressure is at 1,004 millibars, max sustained winds 45 knots or at 50 miles per hour. Current location on the latitude and longitude scale is at 19.4 north, 74.3 west. Its current movement is west-northwest at 18 knots or at 21 miles per hour. Alright, let's get into some wind shear. You can see not a lot of wind shear, a little bit kind of over New Orleans. But other than that, a little bit behind Tropical Storm Laura right now, kind of over San Juan. But other than that, not much wind shear could be happening here with these storms. So these storms could intensify. We just don't know how intense they will get. And then here are the sea surface temperatures. You can see mid to upper 80s, kind of around here where the storms are expected to make landfall. Right here, right where Tropical Storm Laura is expected to kind of go into this area with around 87 degrees Fahrenheit in water. So very warm waters for these storms to intensify with. And let's see the tropical intensity guidance. You can see very high favorable conditions for intensity along these waters due to the very warm water. So that's how these storms could very rapidly intensify. And then looking at the atmospheric moisture, you can see very, very moist conditions right along where these storms are expected to be. And a little bit down here, but other than that, there's not much dry air. You can kind of see that dry air over Puerto Rico has definitely faded. And then a little bit kind of over the Cuban area, very moist air, which is not good for these storms as they do love these warmer waters. That's what I'm doing for the video, guys. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. Make sure to hit that red subscribe button down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.